class, it's Mrs. Gooch again. So today we talked about tree diagrams. With our I can being, I can create a tree diagram to find possible outcomes. So again, our topic is going to be tree diagrams. So a tree diagram is used to make a list of outcomes. And we do it for a couple of reasons. It's an easy way to count how many outcomes we get, but it's also a very easy and efficient way of naming our possible outcomes. So let's do a couple where we have to do that. So here's an example. I have a number cube and it's rolled, and then I have a coin and it's tossed. So the first event that happens is I've got this number cube. A number cube has 6 options. So I know I'm going to have 6 numbers. So I'm going to think about that for just a second. And I'm going to go, well, I could get a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 6. But then it continues to say that a coin is tossed. Well, I know a coin is either a heads or tails. So I know that that's going to happen. Yesterday we talked about independent and dependent events. So this is an independent event. Me rolling the number cube does not change how flipping a coin happens. So I know if I get a 1, I could get a heads or a tails. And I'm going to abbreviate head to H and tails to T. But I know if I roll a 2 and I flip the coin, again, I could get heads or tails. And that's true for each of the number cube actions, is I could still get a head or a tail each time. So now I can count this up and I can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 possible outcomes. So there are 12 possible outcomes. Okay, so then that was an easy way to know that I had 12 possible outcomes from doing those 2 things. But now I need to think about what the names for each of those outcomes would be. So if I said I rolled a 1 and I got a head, so one of the names is a 1, and a head. Well, the other side of that is I could get a 1 and a tails. So a 1 and a tails. And then I could get a 2 and a head, a 2 and a tails, a 3 and a head, a 3 and a tails, a 4 and a head. And you can see I'm writing them all out. And I only have to do this whenever it asks for me to write the list of possible outcomes. So there's my list of possible outcomes. All right, so that's how you would do this example. So let's try one that's a little bit harder. So let's look at the next example. All right, in this example, I have a coin, and I'm going to flip the coin. But not only do I have 1 coin, but I have 3 coins. So I have 3 different coin colors. And I'm going to do this just so you guys can see it a little bit easier. So coin 1, it has a head or a tails. 2 possible outcomes. All right, well, coin 2. Coin 2 also has heads or tails. But coin 2 doesn't change what happens with coin 3 or with coin 1. So if I got a head on the first coin, I could still get a head on the second coin or a tails. And the same thing is true here, is I could get a heads or a tails. Now, when I do this for coin 3, it's true each time, is each one could then also get flipped a heads or a tails. Now, it's really important as you are doing these to remember that these are tree diagrams. Writing out full things is really hard, but part of the thing that needs to happen is we need to include these little branches that we talked about in class so we can see this tree completely. So now I'm going to write out the names of each of these because I have, well, let's see how many outcomes I have. I have 1 outcome, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 outcomes. I have 8 possible outcomes. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to go down the path. And I see that I get heads, heads, heads. Now if I go down this other path, I go down, head to head, head to tails. So I have head, head, tails. Now I've done this section. I'm going to start going down the right side. So now I'm going to go heads, tails, heads. So head, tail, head. And then I've got the last one on that side. That's where I go straight down. And it's head, tails, tails. So there's 4 of my possible outcomes. I want you to pause the video right now. I want to see if you can get the last 4 outcomes. Go for it. All right, so I have listed out the 8 possible outcomes. A nice way to check is if you look at each one of my possible outcomes, they never repeat. And so you can actually see that really easily, is that they never repeat. Because here I have heads, 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 head, head, tails, head, tails, head. And you can see that they never repeat. So that's a really great way of looking at it. Thank you, class, for watching. Have a great night and long weekend. Bye.